You knew someone once who was kind. They joined your office on a Monday. They knew your name by Wednesday. They covered for you when you were sick. By every measure that actually counts, they were a good person. And then you watched something happen to them. It did not happen in a day. It happened across months. A harder edge in the voice. A particular tone in meetings, that tone, the one that says the adults are talking now. They began to interrupt. They stopped covering for anyone. 1 year in, you looked at them and realized you were looking at a smaller, quieter copy of the worst person in the building. And here is the part nobody warns you about. They never noticed it happening. Not once. To this day, that person is certain they are exactly who they always were. This episode is not about your boss. You have heard enough about your boss. This episode is about the thing that changed your boss. Because that same thing is in the room with you right now. It is airborne. It has no symptom you can search for, and your immune system has never been told it exists. Let me give you the single sentence that the rest of this video is going to prove. Toxic people in offices are not hired. They are grown. Your company did not go out and find them already broken. Your company built them on site from ordinary materials. And the next one it builds could be anyone. It could be the colleague you trust most. It could, if you cannot see the process, be you. That is not an accusation. It is a description of a mechanism. And the moment you can see a mechanism, it loses most of its power over you. So let us look at it directly. The organizational psychologist Robert Sutton spent years studying what he bluntly called the no asshole rule. His central finding was not that some people are simply difficult. It was that difficulty spreads. Toxic behavior moves through a workplace the way a cold moves through an office in winter, person to person, desk to desk, until a whole team carries it and nobody can remember who brought it in. And here is how little it takes to start. Psychologists ran a now famous experiment. They put people into groups of 3 for a task, and they made one person, chosen completely at random, by a coin toss, with no skill and no merit involved, the leader. Then partway through, they brought in a plate of cookies with 1 extra cookie, more than the group could evenly share. The randomly chosen leader was the one who reached for the extra cookie, reliably. They also chewed with their mouth open more, dropped more crumbs, ate more sloppily. 30 minutes of fake, random power was enough to visibly change how a grown adult ate a biscuit. 30 minutes did that. Now think about 30 months. Think about 30 years. The researcher behind much of this work, Dacher Keltner, found something harder still. Power does not only make people behave worse. It measurably erodes the brain's capacity for empathy, the ability to read a room, to feel what another person feels, to take someone else's point of view. The longer a person holds power, the weaker that capacity becomes. Keltner calls it the power paradox. People rise by being attuned to others, and then power slowly strips out the very skill that lifted them. You have watched this exact film. The senior who, before the promotion, would genuinely listen at the chai tapri. And 6 months after the new designation, sits across from you in the appraisal meeting and truly cannot, understand why you are upset. They are not pretending. The receiver has been removed, and it does not stop with them. Research on workplace incivility shows that rudeness is contagious in the most literal sense. Witnessing it, simply watching one person be sharp with another, measurably raises the odds that you will be sharp with the next person you deal with. The contempt does not stay at the office. It travels home in your chest and comes out on someone who did nothing to earn it. So that is the pattern. Now the question that actually matters. Why is the human brain so easy to catch this with? Why does it pick the disease up so willingly? Because catching it once kept your ancestors alive. For almost all of human history, you lived in a small group on an open landscape, and your survival depended on one skill above nearly every other, reading who held status and aligning yourself with them. The individual at the top of your band controlled access to food, to safety, to mates. A brain that watched that person closely and quietly copied them was a brain that lived. A brain that ignored them was not. So evolution built you an imitation engine, and you are running it right now. You did not choose it. When you are near a person with power, your brain studies them and begins, beneath your awareness, to match them, their language, their posture, their reactions. This is not a weakness. It is a survival reflex more than 1,000,000 years old. In the office, it has simply been aimed at exactly the wrong target. And there is a second mechanism, and this one is not psychological at all. It is chemical. The neurobiologist Robert Sapolsky spent decades studying stress in primates. Here is the finding that matters tonight. When you exist near aggression, a sharp boss, a hostile peer, a hostile floor, your body floods with stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, and chronic exposure to those hormones does something specific. It makes you more reactive, quicker to anger, slower to empathize. The toxic environment does not just make you unhappy. It retunes your nervous system to behave like the environment. Hold on to this. You do not decide to catch it. Your body catches it. Your biology is downstream of the room you sit in for 8 hours a day, which sounds like a sentence with no appeal. It is not. And to show you why, I want to tell you about a troop of baboons. Sapolsky followed a wild baboon troop in Kenya for decades. He called them the garbage dump troop because they fed from a pit behind a tourist lodge. In that troop, the biggest, most aggressive males ran everything. They bullied, they bit, they chased, and they refused to let any lower status male or any female near the food. Then between 1983 and 1986, something happened. The meat in the dump was contaminated. And because it was the aggressive, dominant males who fought their way to the pit and ate the most, it was the aggressive, dominant males who died. 46% of the adult males in the troop. The biggest and the meanest gone. What happened next is one of the most important findings in the science of human behavior, and almost nobody knows it. The troop did not collapse into chaos. The opposite. Aggression dropped dramatically. The animals groomed each other more. They sat closer together. The lowest status males, for the first time, showed measurably lower stress. And here is the line that should change how you see your own office. Those effects lasted. They persisted into the late 1990s, long after every single one of the original, gentler males had also died. The peaceful culture outlived the peaceful individuals. And when new adolescent males raised in normal aggressive troops migrated in, they did not import their aggression. Within months, they adopted the gentler culture. As Sapolsky put it, the rough new arrivals were plainly learning that this was simply not how things were done here. Sit with what that proves. Contagion runs in both directions. The very mechanism that transmits toxicity, imitation, proximity, a nervous system tuning itself to the room, transmits health with exactly the same efficiency. The vector is not evil. The vector is neutral. It carries whatever it is handed. The office is not a disease. The office is a medium. And the only question that has ever mattered is what is being transmitted through it and by whom. I need to tell you about a meeting I have never been able to forget. This was years ago at the bank. By then I thought of myself as one of the good ones. I hated the baboon bosses. I hated the performance theater. I had spent years quietly certain that whatever this place was, it had not reached me. A junior colleague presented an idea. It was not polished. It was a little naive. But it was honest. They had clearly thought about it and they were nervous saying it out loud, and I dismissed it. I did not shout. I did not insult anyone. I did something quieter and I think now worse. I used the tone. The small, smiling, patient tone that tells the whole room, that was sweet, but the adults will take it from here. And then I saw their face. I saw a specific flash of hurt cross it, and I recognized that flash because it was mine. It was the exact expression I had worn years earlier on the other side of a table just like that one, when an older man did to me precisely what I had just done to them. Now the old way to tell this story ends right there. In shame. I had caught the disease. But that is not actually what happened in that room, and it is not the lesson. Here is what actually happened. In the second I saw that face, something interrupted. I did not only feel guilt. I received information. For the first time, I could see the contagion not in a book, not in my boss, but operating live inside me in real time. And the moment I could see it, it stopped completing. Because that is the one thing this process cannot survive. It runs on not being seen. It needs a host who believes they are simply being realistic, being senior, managing expectations. The instant the host can name what is moving through them, They stop being a host and start being a witness. I did not become a better man in that meeting. I became an observer of a mechanism that had been running on me unseen for a decade. And you cannot be quietly rewired by something you are watching with your eyes open. So let us name it properly. The whole mechanism. The imitation engine, the stress chemistry, the spread from desk to desk, the host who never feels it happen. Asshole contagion, the transmission of toxic behavior through proximity, status-imitation, and chronic stress. A process that requires no malice, no decision, and no awareness, and that completes only in a host who cannot perceive it. Notice what that definition does not contain. It contains no villain. The boss in episode 1 was not born a baboon, he was a host, infected upstream by someone you have never met. The fakery in episode 3 was not a conspiracy of liars, it was a contagion of behavior that nobody chose. There was never a patient zero to hate. There was only a medium transmitting in a building with no immune system. For your whole career you have had no word for this. That absence was not harmless. A thing with no name spreads unchecked because no one can point at it and say, that right there is the thing that is happening to us. It has a name now. And the moment a contagion is named, it has a weakness. Here is where most videos would tell you to protect yourself. Build a wall, survive. I am going to tell you something better because you have earned it and because it is true. A contagion has exactly one fatal weakness. It depends on being invisible. It moves through people who cannot see it move. Every part of it, the imitation, the chemistry, the slow rewiring, requires a host who is not looking. You are now looking. That changes your position in the building completely. Until tonight, you were inside the mechanism, a surface it could spread across. You are not standing there anymore. You have stepped back. You are watching it run. And a person watching a contagion is no longer its host. They have become something an ordinary office has almost none of. They are immune. Not because you are a better person than the people around you. Let us keep this honest, you are not. You are immune because you can see the vector and the vector cannot work in the light. But immunity is not the end of this. It is the beginning of the part that actually matters. In a body, an antibody does not only protect the single cell that carries it. It travels. It neutralizes the thing that is spreading and it can be passed on. And the baboons proved this is not a metaphor. The peaceful troop did not stay peaceful because of a rule on a wall. It stayed peaceful because the individuals already inside it transmitted that culture to every nervous new arrival who walked in with no meeting, no motivational poster. They simply were the medium, and the medium had changed. So understand exactly where you now stand. The junior who watches your tone in the next meeting is catching something from you right now. The peer who mirrors your reaction in the next crisis is being tuned by you right now. You are never going to be either infected or safe. That was always the wrong question. You are always going to be a carrier. The only thing you actually get to decide, the only thing, is what you carry. Most people in your office will work an entire career and never know this process exists. They will catch it or carry it completely blind, pass it down to their own juniors and call it how the corporate world simply is. That is the large group. That is most people. You are not in that group anymore. As of tonight, you are in a much smaller one, the people who can see the contagion move. And a person who can see a contagion move is not its victim, not even only its survivor. They are the closest thing the building has to a cure, walking around, deciding in every meeting which way to point. The disease was never the real story. You were. You were always the variable. Now you know which way you want to point. Next time. If the office is a medium that transmits, then living inside it requires a kind of protection, and most people build that protection without ever reading the fine print on what it costs them. There is a price for the armor, and almost no one sees the bill until it is far too late to refuse it. That episode is called emotional armor. It comes next.